On the agenda today. Good morning, February 1st. Love it. 2122 today. So welcome. We have a kind of a jam-packed agenda today. We have Chris Eyler from the U.S. Chamber that'll provide some updates from DC and kind of at our federal level. And then we've got our South Sound Chamber of Commerce Legislative Coalition lobbyist, Carolyn Logue, here as well to give us updates. A lot of what our priorities are definitely mirroring what our coalition that we're a part of is taking a swing at. And so she's just great to keep us, real-time information so that I can, if I need to, put a call to action to this group, to our chamber, to testify as much as we can, to write letters as much as we can. With this format being on Zoom for a lot of these bills being heard, it really makes it something that is just a lot more doable logistically for us to be there and be a voice. And so I encourage you, when you see emails from me about cases that are important to you or issues that are important to you, I do hope you write a letter, sign on, testify. Any or all is greatly appreciated. I'm sure we'll hear from our representatives today to hear that it does truly matter. And, in Puyallup and Sumner, we want them to know that, we support business. So I can't remember with Carolyn or Chris. I'm just going to sort of throw it to either one of you. If one of you has a schedule constraint and needs to kind of pop on first, I'm perfectly fine either way and respectful of that. So hi, Carolyn. Hello.
Hi, how are you? Let me see if I can fix that glare real quick. Hold on.
No problem.
No, probably not. Oh, well, sorry about that.
You're shining. You're glowing.
I'm glowing. It's my halo. Yeah. I just let legislators know that that's why they should listen to me.
Yes, exactly.
I see Representative Jacobson's on.
Yes.
I never see anybody. So, it's like...
Well, yeah, let's, all right. Well, hopefully we'll see some more faces here. I know we are all getting used to just multitasking and listening, but it sure is nice when we get to see faces. So Chris or Carolyn, I can't remember who's going first or if it matters either way.
I thought it was me.
Okay.
Because I need to get to some other meetings. So
I thought one of you had said that. So perfect.
Yep.
Thanks for clarifying, and you're teed up and ready to go, Carolyn.
And I'll be really quick. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I'm Carolyn Logue. I think many of you I've met before. I'm the lobbyist for the South Sound Chamber of Commerce Legislative Coalition. It's a pleasure to be here virtually. And as you know, this is a completely virtual session again. Even though they say it's kind of hybrid, not really. Especially during committee time. So what's happened is I think for the short session, I don't know if the count's been done, but there were a lot of bills introduced for a short session, even though everybody said we're going to keep this down. And even though every legislator I talked to is like, oh, I hate doing this virtually. It's so hard. So with all this, about 1,000 bills just almost right off the gate. We've had 4 weeks of hearings. Things are moving. I think we're going to see some things slow down, I hope. But things are moving, and not necessarily everything from a business perspective is good. In fact, there's a lot of things that we're very concerned about. But I think also what we're going to find is there's going to be a lot more, I think, just because of the virtual nature, hopefully a lot more discussion about whether something should actually go forward in this short session, because there's really not time to do all the amendment work on some of these big policies. So just for the South Sound Chamber of Commerce Coalition, we have a number of different areas. Of course, transportation is the number one area that we've always been working on. And that is, there's a number of different bills. The big thing there, of course, is the budget. And we're watching the transportation budget closely. As you know, revenues from gas tax are down, but the operating budget revenues are high. So what you're seeing is some discussions by the budget chairs on how to, and actually the governor's budget included a move of about 300 to 400 million from the operating budget into the transportation budget, which is very, very unusual. Capital budget goes back and forth all the time, but generally not transportation. But they're really starting to look at the size of the operating budget, which I believe has about an $8 billion surplus over the next 4 years, and whether or not everything in the transportation budget. So we have the constitutional protection under the 18th Amendment for gas taxes to be used for roads. Generally, it's been sort of said, well, we're going to use that for transportation and that type of thing. There's some look at the transportation budget. Representative Barkas did an amazing job of kind of combing through the transportation budget and identifying areas that could be done with operating budget dollars. So you're getting a lot of discussions about that. I think what you'll see in the end, although there are many who want to do ongoing movements of dollars, such as taking all the sales tax from transportation construction projects and putting them back in the project, and some other things that are ongoing funding into the transportation from the operating. But the operating budget, they've got to get the other budget writers to agree to that, and they're holding on to their money for other things. So I think what you'll probably see is some sort of one-time moves of money to keep projects going. They're talking about doing a non-gas tax proposal package of some sort. There's still preservation and maintenance, and kind of looking at that. You're also seeing road usage charges pop back up again. And there's a hearing on that this week. That's that per mile charge that they tested for personal vehicles. There's a move to make that subject to the 18th Amendment so that stays in the roads. There's several bills out there that basically do sales tax deferrals for specific projects, like the Gateway project and the 167 405s, 509, so that the sales tax from those projects can stay in the projects specific to that project, not an ongoing just blanket sales tax from all transportation construction stays in the transportation budget. So that's the kind of thing I think. So a lot of the bills, I think, on transportation having to do with the motor vehicle sales tax and some of the other things in terms of these sales tax deferrals are really going to be dependent in the end on what happens with the overall budget discussions and which of those are going through. So that's, I think, going to be a kind of something we're watching closely. There does seem to be a very strong commitment. Your legislators are awesome from this area to keep that Gateway project going and not let it slide. So and every time I talk to anybody about it, they say, yeah, we hear about that all the time. Okay, we won't let the Gateway go. So it's something we're watching closely. There is a significant funding deficit in the Gateway project right now, just because of drop in tolling revenue projections and that type of thing. And that's something I think we're really arguing to fill that hole and do what we can to keep that project going. So and then we're also watching how much it's going to matter what they do with the federal dollars coming in. A lot of those are going to go to a bridge south of here, and that type of thing. So there's a lot of other projects out there and a lot of maintenance and preservation, and they still have to do culverts. But I think that's one of the big things that they're trying to figure out. Culverts don't have to be done in the transportation budget. They could be done by the operating budget and the capital budget. So that's something really to take a look at. So that's transportation. Do you want me to just go, Tara, and then I'll stop for questions afterwards? Okay. Yep. All right. Climate change. We're watching some bills in the climate change carbon tax arena. Last year's building decarbonization bill, that one went down, that 1084, that one did not go anywhere. So Representative Remmel and the governor broke those up into 4 different bills. One that they call clean heat, having to do with some serious restrictions on gas companies. Another one that was 1767, 56. So the clean heat is 1766. And then its companion 5668. The next one is 1767, which was targeted electrification. That's Senate Bill 5666. That allows public utility districts to do target electrification programs. There's another one, 1770, that's companion is 5669. That actually puts more restrictions on the state energy code, such as requires all houses to focuses less on energy efficiency, more on greenhouse gas emissions, which changes the dynamic in terms of what types of appliances and fuel are used, and also then requires all residents to be solar ready, new construction, residential construction to be solar ready. So that's a huge concern. It would also create what's called a reach code or a stretch code, so that could be a more restrictive energy code on residential construction than the state there would have to be one single reach code or stretch code that a local government who wanted to use it could adopt. But that's a concern for contractors and suppliers on what the different, it would create a lot of confusion. They do create huge amounts of confusion. You really have to watch where the lines are in your development. But it also then sets some communities up for some problems that other communities won't have. And then the last bill is called the Clean Building. It's a stretch, an expansion of the Clean Building Performance Standards Bill that passed a few years ago, moves that down from 50,000 square feet to 20,000 square feet. And it's just a requirement for that these buildings meet certain performance standards and provide reports on that. It just went into effect for the 50K buildings this past summer. I think they're ironing out some of the details. That one I think will probably pass. It's had some negotiating language, but and I think that we're going to be fighting the Energy Code 1 and the targeted electrification. I don't think the Clean Heat bill is going to move this year. Also over being discussed is kind of something interesting as we talk about banning natural gas. They're looking at hydrogen. 5910 just came out, which would actually be a better bill to develop the new technologies that could enhance or replace natural gas and reduce its use, but still use the same infrastructure instead of just banning it outright, such as in new construction, and then having to retrofit if hydrogen and other renewables actually work better than electricity. So that's what's happening there. CTE focuses on apprenticeship this year. I know Tara has one of the apprenticeship bills, 1536, which is regional apprenticeship bills done through their educational service districts to try and get apprenticeship around the state. There's also some looks at apprenticeship programs, Senate Bill 5600 and Senate Bill 5914. Senate Bill 5600 actually looks at kind of expanding state registered apprenticeship programs more. And there are some concerns because our apprenticeship programs tend to be very union focused. And we have this apprenticeship council that approves them. And there's some look, and we want federal reciprocity so we can have more apprenticeship programs. And so there's some union versus non-union and, other battles going on right now. So it's being amended. The 5600 is in the Senate. That's moving through the Senate. It's starting to look a little better. 5914 is a great one. That would allow the for-profit right now, in order to qualify as an approved training program for journey level or specialty electricians, you have to be not for profit. So we've got a tax status keeping us rather than just an accreditation or quality measurement. So we're trying to get that removed so we can look at quality measurements and accreditation as opposed to a tax status for approving schools. General business, you've got the long-term care up there. That the 18-month delay was signed by the governor. He also signed 1733, which also provides some more exemptions, but that then brings concern to the actuarial soundness of that program over time. So there's going to be a lot more discussion on this. I don't know how much more. Now what we're seeing is the repeal bills are going in, and that's where the business community would like to go, is get rid of this program. Look at how you do this, not attached to employment, because the need for long-term care shouldn't be attached to employment. Let's see, other general business. There's a lot of labor bills out there. I won't bore you with that. We don't have time. I think the big ones we're trying to watch right now are what's happening with unemployment and paid family leave. You may have heard about some problems with the paid family leave fund. They present to ESD, unbeknownst to all the business and labor members on the advisory committee, presented to the Senate Ways and Means Committee a week and a half ago, that they were going to face a $200 million shortfall in cash. They didn't have cash. So that has prompted, there was a bill out there, I believe it was 5438 in the Senate, that allows expanded paid family leave to people who were taking leave to take care of a child or for the birth of a child or for a person, and then that person or child passed away, to extend it another 2 weeks. There was some discussion with that about how that works with bereavement leave. But that bill has been amended to not only include that expansion to an extra 7 days for the person to stay on leave, but also then to add in auditing and accounting accountability standards for the paid family leave program, some significant audits of the program, and some actuarial, trying to figure out how they can get better actuaries in there to do better projections. This is a huge concern because employment security, not only have they had huge problems in our unemployment insurance system, which is still not where it needs to be. And we're still seeing potential, there's a bill out there, I believe it's 1486 I think it's 1486 that would expand the reasons you can quit your job and collect unemployment insurance. Childcare, problems. That's not what unemployment insurance is for. We learned that during the pandemic that unemployment insurance cannot be a social welfare program. It's not designed or built to be that. So we're really concerned, not to mention the fraud, not to mention the problems with people trying to just get unemployment they were due. And then they have the long-term care program. So ESD, with all these, they couldn't figure out that they had an actuarial problem. They said they finally learned how to do the math. That literally, I think that was the quote. We're really concerned about that agency and its ability to financially handle these millions, billions of dollars that are going through it right now. So that's a big project for us. There's a really good little bill out there. And I know I'm probably taking up all your time. Really good little bill called, it's House Bill 2019. No, is that it? Yeah. Oh, no, I'm losing it. Yep. No, that's the retail. 1819. Sorry. It's House Bill 1819. This makes the personal property tax exemption in Washington state. It also has a constitutional amendment. It goes from $15,000 to $100,000. This is a huge small business bill. I've actually got in touch. So back in my old days when I was in FIB, I worked with now Congressman Kilmer, Derek Kilmer, to increase it from, I think it was 5 to 15. So we've roped Congressman Kilmer to come back in and help us with this. But this is a good bill. And if we can make this happen, that's a huge tax break for a lot of small businesses and mid-sized businesses. Let's see, I'm just going to run through a couple others. Housing. I'm not even going to talk about housing today, Tara. You're going to have an entire thing on housing. There are so many housing bills. I can't keep up with them. I know there's a really a good bill, 1782, which has to do with middle housing near transit, which has been a coalition priority. But it's got a lot of, it's in a committee where it's getting a lot of mixed messages and there's a lot of issues. And so everybody's like, get it out of the committee. We'll fix it after it gets out. A lot of bills on ADUs. I've never seen so many bills with the same title. So it's going to be interesting to see what pops out of that in the end in terms of any possible solutions. So we're also kind of watching the police stuff. There are some good retail theft bills, 1656, that would allow concealment to be included of a retail establishment to be included in the definition of theft. And I believe it's 5781, which would increase the penalty for what's called organized retail theft, which it would be anything with 2 accomplices or more, or in aggregate, solely or in aggregate of $750. Increasing penalties is a huge deterrent because usually when you get into the organized retail theft, these guys are on the computer. They know every state's penalties. There's charts out there and they watch them. And so they know the states that have lower penalties, and that's where they focus their time. And we think that's what's going on. We're also watching, I think you're going to see some changes in the vehicle pursuits. You're going to see some changes, big focus on the use of force bills. Let's see. And then I think the last one, I know you've got your data center bill. I know Representative Jacobson's here and she has one too. I'm just going to give you a heads up on that, which is really concerning. And the contractor community came out opposed to those bills yesterday. And I think it kind of surprises people. But the problem is this legislature, in every bill, they're good bills, but then they put in what's called project labor agreements. These are agreements that have benefit standards and other things that a lot of businesses can't do. And it's you might say, oh, well, the people building these data centers would have, they'd have plenty of money to provide health insurance and do that. The problem is it allows the company, whoever's doing the bid, whoever the project is doing the bid, and all the contractors have to bid to what they want and what's defined. And the problem is these benefits tend to be union. So it shuts out non-union contractors right away. It tend to only be things that large businesses can do. So anybody small, and it also often applies to subs as well on the project. So it's a huge concern. It's something we're seeing in every bill. And the contractor community has pretty much said, we're just going to oppose every bill that has these in there. Stop putting these in these bills because they're shutting out non-union businesses and businesses, particularly in rural areas, and shutting out a lot of Washington state businesses as well. So that's all I have. I think hopefully that was fast enough and I didn't take up all your time.
Oh, no, excellent. So yeah, definitely have a few minutes for questions if anyone has some for you. That was great. Oh, I see Kurt Jimstead. PLAs. She's a big concern.
Yeah, they do. We don't understand why they keep putting PLAs in and then saying they want to help disadvantaged communities. I mean, a lot of small businesses can't find health insurance at a high level for their employees. Okay.
And so, yeah, Representative Jacobson, I don't know if you have anything that you may want to say directly to Carolyn or to the group about your experience thus far.
Yeah, and I had a bill last year that specifically helped our Centeris, our local data center that needs the tax break to compete with Hillsborough and even our own rural areas in Washington. And I put in, on the advice of someone, a project labor agreement being told, oh, it will pass this way and we'll pull it out in appropriations. Well, that stinker is still sitting there on my bill. So I'm kind of actually happy that they've moved forward with their own Democrat version, which goes to rural and urban centers. And I think it's going to pass, but it does have some language in it that is troublesome. But it would be helpful for Centeris to get the tax break on their purchases of equipment. So mixed bag. And yeah, thanks, Carolyn. I'm taking notes on what you're saying. Thank you.
Yeah,
This is the problem with those project labor agreements. Of course, everybody wants that data center tax incentive. Is like, well, okay, we'll take it. And the contractors are just like, stop. This is happening on, it's not just this, it's happening on everything.
I will never put my name on a bill with that in it again. I'm just promising right now.
Cindy, this is Kurt. If you want to know more about PLAs, just call me.
Thank you. I should.
I mean, I'll tell you a PLA story. So we had a situation back after the earthquake in 2001 with the state capitol building. And if they had to use Washington state dollars only to repair the Capitol, it would have taken a long time to get those repairs done. But because they could qualify for federal emergency dollars, it was a ban on using PLAs from those dollars. It was under the George W. Bush administration. And that allowed those repairs to get started much quicker. Or much more quickly. I guess that'd be more appropriate.
Was the executive order bill, is that something that's been seen or?
Yeah, that actually I think had its hearing in the Senate. Yes, was it the House or the Senate yesterday? It was the Senate, I think, Sam Hunt's committee.
Yeah, in the Senate, and had more testifiers than ever there was, like five grand worth of testifiers. Yeah. They didn't all testify, of course, but no. Yeah, lot of support for that.
Yep.
Okay. Great.
Yeah. And it was a Democrat bill too, which is kind of interesting. So that was good to see that the Democrats are sitting there now saying, okay, this is probably a little long.
Fantastic. I see we have Executive Dan Meyer on as well. Good morning. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. Good to join you. Good to see Carolyn and Cindy.
Oh yeah.
Hi.
Got Superwoman up there fighting these battles for us.
I'm tired and I'm locked in my house.
Oh. All right. Well, any other questions for the group? Great. Well, I know you've got a busy day and we so appreciate you being here. Thank you, Carolyn.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm going to sign off. Yep. Bye, Chris. Sorry, I'm going to miss you. Your talk.
So our updates with Carolyn are occurring on Wednesday afternoons, and I do try to then take what she's put in the form of some bullets, updates weekly. I do try to push those updates out to this group, so I will continue to do that. So now let's kick it over to Chris Eyler with the U.S. Chamber. Thanks again for being here.
Thanks, Tara. Happy to be here. It's happy to see all of you again. Just quickly, I want to just one last time extend the U.S. Chamber's gratitude to you for all the support you gave us last year on the infrastructure bill. We did finally get that through. That was our top priority for the year for this Congress. And frankly, it's been our top priority for the past decade. So every member of the South Sound congressional delegation, as well as both Senators Murray and Cantwell, supported that legislation. So in your conversations with them, please thank them for their support. We expect that a lot of that money is going to start to be moving out fairly shortly and fairly quickly. While we got the bill through, our work here is not done. We do want to make sure that to hold the administration's feet to the fire and make sure they move quickly, start funding things. So we have set up a website, letsrebuildamerica.com, where we will be posting updates on where things stand with the enactment or implementation of the infrastructure bill. So please take a look at that. We will be updating that as we get more and more information. And for Tara's benefit, we will be continuing to hold briefings and calls as we get more information as that money starts to go out the door. Looking to this year, what's going on in DC and on Capitol Hill is quite the opposite of what Carolyn just updated you on. There really is not report right now. The congressional agenda is kind of stuck in the mud. Congressional leadership spent the first month of the year largely focused on their voting rights legislation and then a failed effort to repeal or eliminate the filibuster in the Senate. Neither of those efforts went anywhere. The Build Back Better reconciliation bill, this is the $1.75 trillion social spending bill that passed out of the House of Representatives right before Thanksgiving on a purely partisan vote. That is also stuck in the Senate. And at this point, I think it's, you can almost 100% say that the bill that passed the House is dead. That does not mean that the effort itself is going to go nowhere. The reconciliation instruction is valid until the end of the fiscal year, which is September 30th. So congressional Democrats could regroup and come up with an alternative bill. But right now, there's just a lot of internal disagreement within the Democratic caucus about how to proceed on that. And it's unclear whether there are even any negotiations going on at the moment to find a path forward on that piece of legislation. Just as a reminder, even though the House bill is effectively dead, the U.S. Chamber did oppose that bill. We had pretty significant concerns about the potential for it to exacerbate inflation. It did raise taxes on the business community, so obviously that was of great concern to us. And it also included a number of labor provisions that were problematic in that they would really tilt the table towards labor unions and away from businesses. So, but that all being said, at this point, it doesn't look like it's pretty clear the House bill is not going anywhere, but it remains unclear how they're going to move forward with that effort. Our immediate concern right now, though, is the appropriations bill. Congress has yet to pass a full fiscal 2022 appropriations bill. We are still operating under a continuing resolution, which expires on February 18th. While our big concern is just making sure the government's funded for the rest of the year, our other main concern with this is until they pass a new appropriations bill, all of the increases we saw in the infrastructure bill are not going to be realized. They need to pass. Right now, we are operating under the appropriations levels agreed to prior to passage of the infrastructure bill. So we need a new appropriations bill to see those increases that were agreed to in the infrastructure bill. So it's very important that Congress get their work done here and pass a full year appropriations bill. We do not want to see any more continuing resolutions beyond the February 18th expiration of the current CR. Beyond that, in the short term, you're likely not going to see a lot of activity in Congress. The president is not scheduled to do his State of the Union address until March 1st. So over the course of the next month or so, it's largely going to be the Congress's focus is largely going to be on appropriations, likely a lot of nominees. In particular, we expect that the president will likely name his Supreme Court nominee sometime by the end of the month. So that's largely going to be what uses up Congress's attention. Once the president has his State of the Union address, we probably will get a little more clarity on where they intend to focus for the rest of the year. But the reality is this is an election year, and it's the window to get much done is going to close pretty rapidly. For our part, our CEO, Suzanne Clark, we held her annual State of American Business event earlier this month, where she laid out our priorities for this year. She hit on 5 main themes: confronting government overreach, addressing the worker shortage, opening new markets and pursuing more trade agreements, ensuring that the tax code supports U.S. competitiveness, and encouraging a civil political discourse. Of those, obviously, our most urgent focus is the worker shortage. In the short term, we are looking for ways we can work with the administration on administrative actions that they to address some of these shortages. Frankly, the problem really is there just aren't enough people. We could put everyone back to work who's out of work, and we'd still be 2 to 3 million workers short of what we need to fill all the job openings. So we need to start looking beyond our borders. We need to start addressing some of the shortcomings of our employment-based visa programs, increasing some of the quotas for those programs to get more people and more workers into the country to fill some of these positions. But long-term, we really do need Congress to start being more serious about comprehensive immigration reform. There's only so much that can be done through administrative actions. Congress really needs to start addressing a lot of the shortcomings with these employment-based visa programs, not to mention finally get around to addressing the situation involving DACA recipients who are really in limbo. They need to be given some certainty so that they can continue working legally in this country. But as I said, the window to get a lot done this year is really closing rapidly with it being an election year. So this is also a good opportunity to just remind you all that the U.S. Chamber does get very involved with a lot of congressional races. That does not necessarily mean that we're going to get involved in congressional races here in Washington State. But when we do get involved, even if it's not here in the Northwest, it does tend to get a lot of attention in the press. So I just want to remind you, yes, we do endorse candidates. Frequently, we do spend money on independent expenditures in support of those candidates. And when, just so that you understand our process, when we are looking to endorse candidates, we don't prioritize Republicans or Democrats. We are a nonpartisan organization. What we prioritize is supporting candidates who go to DC to support pro-business policies and who will go to DC with an interest in governing. As we've seen over the past decade, there are a number of members of Congress who go there to simply gum up the mechanisms of government, shut the government down, put our debt limit at risk. Those are things that are problematic to the business community. We want to support candidates who are not going to go to DC and do those types of things. Moving forward, we are in the process of starting to look and talk to a lot of the candidates who are running for these seats, both incumbents as well as challengers. For incumbents, a lot of our priority when we make these decisions is on our how they voted legislative scorecard. Members of Congress who have a cumulative 70% score or greater on that legislative scorecard typically get our support. Not having that score does not necessarily mean we're going to go all in and try and defeat you. But if you do have a 70% or better, we typically do support you. For open seats, it's a much more rigorous process where we get to know the candidate. We have a candidate questionnaire. We interview the candidates, but we also reach out to our state and local chamber partners. We definitely want to get your input. Even if it is confidential and anonymous, we do want to make sure that we consult with you, that we're aware of any red flags that that we should be aware of about any of these candidates, as well as if us getting involved in that race would create problems for you. It's not necessarily going to be dispositive of whether or not we move forward, but it is a tremendously important part of our decision-making process to get that input from you all. As far as Washington State is concerned, it's hard to say whether we're going to get involved in any of these races. Really, we look to races where we can, us getting involved is going to make a difference. as I said, this process is really just now beginning with our political advocacy committee as we are starting to look at each of these races. And then just one other thing that I always like to remind local chambers when I'm talking about the political program, none of your chamber's dues go to pay for any of our political activities. All of our political activities, independent expenditures, PAC spending, all of that is funded separately and through an entirely separate fundraising mechanism. Your dues go to support a lot of our advocacy work, a lot of our professional development work, but it does not support any of our political advocacy work. But with that, sorry this was so quick, but as I said, there really just isn't much to update you all on at the moment. Congress is really still trying to figure out what its intentions are going to be for the remainder of the year. And it's likely we're not going to get more clarity on that until President Biden gives his State of the Union address and until they can get past the government funding question that they need to address by February 18th when the current continuing resolution expires. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You said that there's 2 to 3 million jobs that would potentially still be open, even if we put everybody back to work in America. What sort of jobs in what industries are available at what pay rates? Is there a breakdown of that? Is there kind of a...
I would have to go back and check with my colleagues in DC, but it's across every single sector of the economy.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Looks like Ryan put a link here in the chat, probably about that declining labor force. A white paper summary. Thank you, Ryan. Yeah, that was
To be honest, this is a problem that preceded the pandemic. In the months leading up to the pandemic, we were seeing the exact same trend that there just are not enough workers available in the U.S. at the moment. And if we're gonna, we do need to do a lot in terms of revamping our worker training programs, but we also need to increase the supply of workers as well. And the only way we can really do that and do that with any kind of speed is to start addressing some of the shortcomings of our immigration system.
interesting. Yeah, any other questions for Chris? Loaded with great information again. I appreciate you being here, Chris. Thank you. Appreciate the updates. So earlier when I was sharing my screen with our legislative priorities, this little sheet here, I just wanted to make mention that our legislative coalition for our chamber, this Government Affairs Committee, met last week. That was Luke Coram, Sarah Joy, and Kurt Jimestad, Lori Waltier, and I. And we had Representative Chambers that at a last minute whim, I was able to join us too, to kind of share a lot of what Team 25 has been working on and give us some insight of where they may need some help with specific bills. So this legislative priority sheet I have just pushed out to this group this morning. And we did try to identify some of the related bills to those issues as well. And the advocate newsletter that we sent out yesterday also gives some good tips on how you can track bills yourself, sign up to testify. Again, I mentioned this at the top of our hour, but your voice matters, numbers matter, and just getting involved and kind of watching along. It's a short session, so get in, get out, but definitely participate. So I wanted to thank Kurt, Luke, and Sarah for their help on this, and Lori Waltier for pulling this together in a readable format for us. So before we move to our county representatives, wanted to make note of that. All right, well, it looks like we have Councilmember Zeiger, Councilmember Morell, and our executive Dan Meyer on the line today. So let's move to county and see what we have going on in that sector.
Dave, you or Hans want to go first, or you want me to kick off?
Go ahead, Bruce.
Thank you. Good morning. Good to see you all. A lot of moving parts and pieces right now, particularly, obviously, we're following a lot of legislation. Very concerned about some of the changes in transportation, particularly those that there are a crowd of legislators that believe that there should never be a new no expanded capacity for vehicles, right? I mean, there's some that are ideologically driven, and that's really significant as we've got Canyon Road, the completion of Canyon Road and 167, both those completions following through on a lot of work that could be impacted by that. So that's particularly important. The other issue that is just really, and I'm sure Dave and Hans can follow up on this, it's very concerning for me right now is public safety in our community in general, and particularly for businesses. It's kind of a perfect storm of many things, starting with the state Supreme Court's Blake decision, which basically legalized drugs hard drugs in our community. That's a huge impact. I was walking in downtown Tacoma going to lunch, and here's a guy smoking heroin on the street on Pacific Avenue, right? So that's a huge problem for our society, and it is rippling out there in many ways, including kind of, you're seeing it on the streets with people in chronically homeless. You're seeing it in the rampant retail crime going on. So those are all just huge issues that we're seeing. Obviously, then combined with the legislative actions that put a lot of handcuffs on our law enforcement officers and really restricted their ability to pursue. It's amazing, if you don't allow people to pursue people who steal cars, then you're going to have a lot more cars stolen, and that's what we're seeing kind of in Pierce County, and that's just a huge frustration. And then combine that with, we've been battling the pandemic in our jail system, and that is a challenge for us, in the sense that we're very concerned that if we lost control of Omicron or the COVID in the jail system, that we would be forced to shut down the jail. So that has put some restrictions on there, trying to make sure we keep the baddest of the bad in there. That has been a challenge in kind of managing the pandemic in the jail. Just when we were starting to really kind of open it back up again for kind of property crimes and the things like that, Omicron hit. So now Omicron is certainly waning in Pierce County. So we're going to be kind of back at that. We've been working regionally on some of the issues. Obviously, there's a connection to it, not the same, but some of this can be, there are some of these people who are committing these crimes that are from the homeless community. We're also working on taking that was also hindered by COVID, but we're now kind of back on the kind of cleanups and taking a more significant action there. We have been investing, and Dave and Hans, thank you very much for that. We've got kind of unprecedented level of investment in kind of expanding existing shelters, creating new shelter options, and then ultimately creating some permanent supported housing around a very innovative model that Dave and I have seen down in Austin, Texas, called Community First Village. So we can do the right thing by those folks and by our community. What's been happening, allowing these encampments to grow, is just a horrific thing for everybody involved, the people in them. And again, I was out last Thursday night at the point in time count. So again, seeing it up close and personal, face-to-face, talking to those folks, and that is just not the right solution for them. And it certainly is not the right solution for our community. So you're seeing a lot of that, continue to work on that. One of the other law enforcement issues is staffing. Certainly the law enforcement has been somewhat demoralized by feeling unappreciated by our community. We continue to remind them that is a very small minority of the community, that the vast majority of the community appreciate the heck out of the service that they provide our community. We are looking at the county level, and I appreciate anything Cindy and her colleagues can do to provide resources to incent kind of retention and recruitment of law enforcement from the state level. We're scrubbing our books hard. We've done some things already, and we're continue to look for new ways to try to kind of recruit and retain the officers that we had. It used to be that Pierce County was a great place to be a deputy. We would allow them to go be a cop, chase bad guys, put them in jail. And for a variety of reasons, including those police quote reform laws, unquote, out of Olympia, they pretty much dumbed down everybody to a much lower standard. So it really was hard for Pierce County deputies who really like protecting our community by chasing bad guys and putting them away. And so that's had a big effect as well. So those would be my opening comments. Hans, you or Dave want to jump in?
Go ahead, Dave.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the update, Bruce. I think you hit most of the higher low points, however you want to take a look at it. I know, and number one issue is public safety. If we cannot make and have our public feel safe, then we're failing them. So definitely watching a lot of the bills down in Olympia to try and correct, I think, an overreaction that happened by the legislature last time. I can't say enough about some of the comments that Executive Dan Meyer said pertaining to the recruitment and the retention of our officers in Pierce County. We have had unprecedented low employment right now within law enforcement. And, it's kind of the benefit risk analysis that a lot of our younger officers are looking at and deciding to make career changes because, as Bruce said, they didn't sign up for this. Unless things, the pendulum swings back a little bit, we're going to struggle. Also, within our court systems are backlogged with this challenge with the pandemic of opening, and then closing has caused a lot of backlog. And the Blake decision, as Bruce said, the perfect storm hit us at the same time. And we've had to review thousands and thousands of cases. Our prosecutor, Mary Robnett, has done a great job on trying to push those cases through, but everyone has to go through due process. So with that, working with Betty Capistani on economic development is always a priority. It's always a fun thing to sit around with business-minded people and try to figure out how to promote business and the creation of businesses within Pierce County. So I always look forward to those gatherings. And I think, that's pretty much the council is just kind of reviewing a lot of legislation, reviewing a lot of the budget provisos that we put in for the last biennial budget. So we'll be moving forward. It's kind of the calm before the storm right now, and look forward to engaging in the business community as far as kind of how we're doing out there. So with that, I'll turn it over to Hans.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Bruce. And good to see everybody this morning. I'll just make some quick points that build on what Bruce and Dave were just saying about public safety. To put in perspective, that just to have the number of current vacancies that are the latest number of vacancies I saw in our sheriff's department 42 vacancies, which there have never been that number of vacancies in our sheriff's department ever. And so this is, you know, having a real world impact on people's safety, of course. And so, you know, at a basic level, if you know folks who want to go into our county sheriff's department, please spread the word. And we passed some incentives in our latest budget to help with that. Car theft statistics. If you look back to October of 2020, there were 367 car thefts recorded in Pierce County. In December of 2021, 915. Again, 367 in October of 2020. That number went up to 915 in December of 2021. And so, you know, to me, it's a huge priority that we fix those you know, reforms that were passed last year with so many unintended consequences that have had you know, a real impact on how our law enforcement officers do their work and how our neighborhoods are protected. Switching to homelessness, we are going to be hearing, we're going to be having a discussion today in our county council human services committee regarding the county's comprehensive plan to end homelessness. That is now sitting with the county council. It went through a process last year with a lot of different stakeholder input, and but we still need, you know, a lot of input from the community as that is sitting in front of the council. And I think it's particularly important that we hear from you know, business and community leaders who are dealing with this issue on a day-to-day basis. So would encourage you to reach out to Dave or I or even Bruce, you know, and we want to hear input on your thoughts on, you know, this comprehensive plan to end homelessness. I'll put the link to that plan as it was submitted to the council in the chat box here in a bit. I share Bruce's enthusiasm. He mentioned about the Community First Village. I'll be testifying today on a bill that would open up new possibilities for being able to cite a master plan community, such as Bruce and Dave have gone to tour down in Travis County, Texas. And, you know, that's just a very different approach to dealing with chronic homelessness than we so often see. And we're very excited, you know, that we've committed $22.3 million out of our county budget, out of federal ARPA dollars toward that, and looking forward to seeing that develop throughout this year and in the coming years. Thank you.
Just two other quick items, Tara, before we open it up to questions. Look forward to them. You know, one is I got to tell you, our court system and our prosecutors have been doing a great job in light of the pandemic. If you look at it, I think we've had more in-person trials in Pierce County than I think the rest of the state combined. At one point, that was the case. So they've been really trying hard to keep up. They can't, obviously, when you get closed by the pandemic, when the Supreme Court orders that. But we have a backlog, but our backlog is nowhere like King County's or others. So everybody's been really chipping in and trying to be really supportive of our community. That's great. The other thing is I did a ride along last month with kind of our deputies out in Parkland, Spanaway. And then when I was out at the point in time count, you know, it is apparent you all know this, right? If we are not out aggressively enforcing our laws, that the scale just says out of control like we've never seen. I'm sure that all of you have seen vandalism, break-ins, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 9 times what you've ever seen before. Things you've never thought about having to do, you're having to do. That's basically another tax on you. I know businesses that are spending $50,000 to harden their facility. I was, again, last Thursday night, was out at 11:30 doing the point in time count, stopped by a gas station on Pacific Avenue, and they had a scenario. They had an armed guard in the gas station when we were there, and you had to stand on a mat, look up at a camera before they would let you in. And even once you were in, you know, everybody's closed their restrooms from they're only open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So it's just all these crazy levels of impacts and costs that stem from these consequences, which is why there's just a tremendous number of horrific consequences of having our society be at this point. So we've got to get it turned around and get it fixed. And it's going to take state level, it's going to take local level, it's going to take all of us getting it back under control. So it's important.
Agreed. A priority for all of us. Do you have some questions for the group for either of our county representatives?
I had a question on the homelessness plan, and thanks for posting that link. I'll take a look at that. I assume that plan includes some kind of wraparound services for mental health and addiction recovery.
Definitely it does. And that is something that we've been bringing in already as we've done our shelter expansions and new shelter options and all that. Part of that has been including bringing services, wraparound services to those facilities so people can instantly get the mental health and the drug support that they need. Hans, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I have some concerns about the way that the plan is laid out, and I hope that we can get into more discussion and push more of the focus toward to behavioral health supports. And yeah, I mean the dollar figures that we're looking at in this plan are huge, and I think are I would like to see us focus a lot on the permanent housing, like a community first village. If we're going to sort of pick and choose where we're going to invest dollars, as soon as possible, I think that's where we really need to put a lot of focus. There is some need for additional emergency shelter. I want to make sure that we're seeing the full picture, and so we're going to have, like I said, we're going to have a conversation about all of this in our Human Services Committee just this morning. But behavioral health has got to be part of that. I think we need to maybe add a little bit more to that plan, or whatever resolution accompanies that plan as the council goes through this.
And we're investing in shelter. Part of the reason for that is the Boise court decision. We've got to strengthen our local control to be able to say, you can't camp on public right of way. You can't camp publicly. We've invested in these facilities to support you and in a dignified way and take care of you. But the consequence of that is you can't choose to just live and trash up wherever you want, right? We're investing to support you. You can't do public camping. You can't do whatever you want. We can't, when I was out on Thursday night, one of the guys that I was leading with, one of the pros, and he's kind of a peer counselor. He's an amazing guy, amazing story, and he's one of the experts on the outreach team. And at one point, one of the people we were interviewing asked him for a bigger tent, right? And he goes, my job is to get you off the streets, not make you more comfortable on the streets. Says it all.
Great. Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you again. I see that we're here right at 9. I'm gonna, just bounce really quickly to our cities. I see Meredith Neal here, and we have Ryan Windish for any updates. Meredith, do you want to start?
Sure. Since I missed last month, I'm sure as you're probably all aware, Representative Jacobson is putting all of her energy into her state job now, and so we're sad to see her go, but happy to see that she was replaced by Councilmember Dennis King. So we've got one new council member on board, and per our council rules, we have a new mayor. So the council selected Dean Johnson as our new mayor, and our new deputy mayor is Ned Whitting. So we've got an exciting team in place for the next 2 years. Councilmember Dorr, formerly Mayor Dorr, is back to being a council member and has been great at helping with that transition as well. Let's see, we have our new City View permitting software that is live now. And according to staff, it's going really well. If any of you are using it and have any thoughts to share, I would love to hear them offline of this. Something that's been really interesting, I pulled together the other day the number of multifamily housing units that we have in for permitting right now. We've got about 500 units in for permitting across the city. And what's been really interesting to me is that they're all across the city. We have 2 projects in downtown, 2 up in South Hill, some over at the Shaw and Pioneer area. And we have a wide variety of types of housing. So some of them are apartments, some of them are condos. We have some live work units with some office spaces attached to it. So I'm really excited to see that we have a lot of new multifamily development and new housing options that are coming to our community. And then the last thing is that we are in the middle of our downtown streetscape master plan. So I'm sure, you know, Tara and the chamber, Lori, have been doing a great job sharing the information on that. We'd love feedback from the community about what our downtown should look like and what the priorities are in the downtown for you. And then we're also launching a new branding and destination marketing campaign. We have a consultant that was just selected, and that'll be happening this spring to do some community outreach on who our community is and how we share that with the larger community around here, sort of the messaging of who our community is as a destination. So we'd love anybody's input on that, and there'll be opportunities that the chamber will be sharing for input on that as well. And with that, I'll hand it over to Ryan.
Thank you, Meredith. And I apologize if you can hear any noise going on outside my window. We are having contractors, they're under construction on sidewalk improvements to access our train station paid for by Sound Transit. They've been rebuilding an enormous amount of sidewalk downtown if you've been in downtown Sumner anytime lately. A couple other things that I wanted to touch on, similar to what Meredith was reporting on, we do have multifamily projects coming to Sumner on about that scale, 500 to 700 units total. They continue to be moving through the permitting process. Nobody's broke ground yet, but certainly on the way. We are also continuing work on the Heritage Park Woonerf design, which is basically turning the streets around Heritage Park in downtown into a plaza that will be under construction this summer. We've been working with our designers on that effort. Also doing a lot of work in parks master planning. We have an existing park, Siebenthaler Park, in an underserved part of the community that is going through a redesign, as well as a brand new park in another part of the community that's also going through an active redesign process with surveys online and whatnot to bring in community input on that. Wanted to give a shout out to our Public Works Department and the grant they received. If you haven't seen the article in TNT that was out on Sunday, I'll post a link to that. They received $14.6 million. It's a Puget Sound acquisition and restoration grant, the largest grant they've ever issued. But it's a worthwhile effort, 170 acres of flood retention and habitat restoration. So we are excited to see that continue to get funding and moving forward. A couple other things. We talked a lot in this meeting about police departments, and our police department is bringing on body cameras. So those will be, they're working on implementing that. So our police officers will be wearing those in the future. And bouncing around here a little bit, but we are also getting some insights into the council's been talking about our Ryan House. The Ryan House on Main Street is the original house for our first mayor of Sumner. It's a historic building. And we being Carmen Palmer mainly, has been looking at studies for how do we reactivate that space. It's been occupied by our Sumner Historic Society for years, but really not open to the public. So how can we make that more an active part of our downtown? So there's work in that regard. And last thing I want to say is the Sumner Main Street Association has a new executive director. I met him a couple weeks ago, Matt Logue. And they also, at the same time, have hired an events coordinator. So we are thrilled that they're going to have some more staff to be able to do even more economic development, events, and good things for business in the downtown. That's all I've got.
Awesome. Yeah, we look forward to meeting him as well next week. Yeah, any questions for anyone here? That was a loaded meeting and so great. I got to run to the airport right now. I'm excited. I just discovered Chris Eyler will be at our WASTE conference as well. So look forward to catching up some more there. Great to see all the faces. I love that Puyallup and Sumner are not only surviving, we are thriving. I feel it in the air, and it's obviously because a lot of you folks here on the call that just keep those cylinders going, right? So thanks for all your support, and we'll see you next month. Thank you.